When Catherine Alexeyevna took the Russian throne in 1762, one thing was clear. Europe had never seen a woman like her. She wasn't born a queen. She seized her crown through pure intellect, ambition, and the strange gift of being underestimated. To the kings of Europe, she was first a curiosity, then a rival, then a threat, and finally, a legend. But legends cast shadows. And in Catherine's case, the shadows grew so large and so bizarre that they outlived the empires that created them. Among these shadows was one rumor so absurd, so wild, and so deliberately engineered that it eventually eclipsed her countless reforms, wars, and cultural transformations. This rumor would become known as the infamous horse scandal, a story repeated for centuries by people who never stopped to ask why it existed, who created it, and what it said about power, gender, and envy in 18th century Europe. To understand how such a scandal started, you have to understand who Catherine was before the rumor swept across Europe like a stain. Born Sophie of Anhalt-Zerbst in a minor German state, she had neither wealth nor power. Her mother pushed her towards strategic marriages, and when Sophie arrived in Russia as a teenager, she found a world of endless snow, glittering palaces, and court conspiracies. She realized survival meant transformation. She learned Russian so fluently she spoke it better than many nobles. She studied history, military strategy, and philosophy. She built alliances, charmed the influential, and quietly observed every weakness of the man she was forced to marry. Peter III, a man whose childish behavior and disregard for Russian customs alienated everyone around him. When the moment came in 1762, Catherine made her move. Supported by the imperial guards and admired by the nobility, she overthrew Peter in a swift, bloodless coup that stunned Europe. Overnight, a foreign-born princess became the empress of the largest land empire on earth, and from that moment, her enemies began sharpening their pens. But while they plotted, Catherine ruled ruthlessly, intelligently, and tirelessly. She modernized Russia's government, expanded its borders, and turned St. Petersburg into a cultural capital of Europe. She corresponded with Voltaire, studied Enlightenment thought, and positioned herself as both a philosopher queen and a conqueror. Russia flourished under her hand. And that was the problem. The European courts led by insecure kings and jealous ministers could not tolerate a woman wielding such power so effortlessly. They called her ambitious, manipulative, and dangerous. They accused her of warmongering even as they fought their own endless wars. They whispered that a woman who could overthrow her husband could overthrow any tradition, any man, any system. Her brilliance threatened them, her strength terrified them, and her authority humiliated them. So when political arguments failed and diplomatic insults didn't break her, they searched for a weapon far more primitive and effective: scandal. The best way to tarnish a female ruler in the 18th century wasn't to question her policies. It was to attack her personal life. And Catherine, a ruler with no intention of remarrying, became the perfect target. She surrounded herself with advisors, allies, and companions. She enjoyed intellectual company and valued loyalty. She refused to apologize for her independence. In a world of patriarchal politics where kings took countless lovers without consequence, a woman exercising personal agency was a threat that had to be punished. Thus began the slow construction of a monstrous rumor. At first, pamphlets whispered that Catherine was too fond of companionship. When that didn't work, they escalated their claims. They gossiped that she gave too much influence to certain officials. They accused her of being emotional and irrational, even though her letters remained some of the most brilliant political writings of her era. As Russia grew stronger, her European rivals, especially in France, Prussia, and Britain, grew desperate. Diplomats who failed to manipulate her returned home bitter. Generals who lost to her armies spread tales to justify their failures. And as each retelling grew more exaggerated, the stories became more outlandish and ridiculous. Eventually, in a feverish frenzy of misogyny and political desperation, someone invented a new rumor, one so absurd it seemed designed not to be believed, but to humiliate. The fabricated tale claimed that Catherine had a shocking fascination involving a horse. It suggested she attempted an act so grotesque and impossible that it defied basic anatomy, logic, and reality. But the power of gossip doesn't rely on truth. It relies on repetition. It relies on the eagerness of people to believe the sensational over the scholarly. And so the story spread. It was whispered in Parisian salons, laughed about in Prussian military camps, and scribbled secretly by pamphleteers. Foreign diplomats who despised her gleefully circulated it. Enemies of Russia weaponized it to portray her as unworthy of respect. Over time, the rumor grew larger than the truth it tried to erase, that Catherine had defeated them all, without ever needing to apologize for being a woman in power. What made the rumor so enduring wasn't its believability and educated person thought it was possible, but its symbolism. It was a crude metaphor suggesting that Catherine's appetite for power, influence, and autonomy was unnatural. It was a misogynistic caricature meant to shame her for living beyond the boundaries expected of women. In short, it was a desperate attempt to reassert a patriarchal worldview that Catherine's reign had shattered. While the gossip swirled outside Russia, Catherine herself remained largely unfazed. In fact, court documents show she found such rumors foolish and amusing. In private letters, she joked about the enormous creativity of her enemies. She knew that engaging with the rumor would only legitimize it. Instead, she chose to overwhelm it with achievements. She expanded Russian territory, reorganized the administration of a sprawling empire, and championed the arts, education, and philosophy. Foreign observers couldn't deny what they saw. A woman ruling like an emperor, thinking like a philosopher, and acting with the decisiveness of a seasoned general. The more she succeeded, the more desperate her detractors became, and the more ridiculous their stories grew. The irony is that while they claimed she was reckless, Catherine was actually remarkably cautious and pragmatic. Her political partnerships were strategic. Her alliances were carefully chosen. Many of the men labeled as favorites were, in truth, political allies placed in positions of influence to stabilize regions or negotiate with nobles. Catherine understood that governance required balance, and she used every tool available with unmatched skill. But when history began recording her legacy, chroniclers often faced a choice: celebrate her accomplishments or repeat the scandal. Many chose the latter, not because it was true, but because it was entertaining. As decades passed, novels, plays, and satirical cartoons continued to repeat the myth. And yet, every serious historian who examined Catherine's life concluded the same thing: the rumor had no basis in fact. It was political slander, so why did it survive for centuries? Because Catherine challenged a world order built by men, for men. She redefined what a female ruler could be. She refused to fit the mold of meekness. The horse rumor wasn't just an attack on Catherine. It was an attack on the very idea of powerful women. It was propaganda disguised as mockery, designed to undermine feminine leadership everywhere. But Catherine's triumph lies not in how she handled the scandal, but in how history eventually judged her. The same Europe that once mocked her now remembers her as Catherine the Great, one of the most influential rulers in modern history. Museums celebrate her achievements. Historians praise her reforms. And the petty rumor that once aimed to destroy her now serves only as proof of her enemies' desperation. Ironically, the scandal that sought to reduce her has instead amplified her legend. It demonstrates the resilience of her legacy and the enduring power of truth over slander. Catherine the Great remains a towering figure, ambitious, complex, brilliant, and undeniably extraordinary. Her enemies, on the other hand, are remembered for a rumor so absurd that it's now a punchline. The scandal thus reveals less about Catherine than it does about the world she defied, a world threatened by strong women and intimidated by intellect. Like many powerful women in history, Cleopatra, Anne Boleyn, Marie Antoinette, Catherine was targeted by smear campaigns. The horse rumor was simply the most sensational example, emerging not from fact, but from fear. Fear of her intelligence, her control, her independence, fear of the very qualities that made her great. Today, the truth has prevailed. The scandal is now recognized for what it was: a political weapon. In the end, the real shock was not Catherine's behavior, but Europe's reaction to a woman who refused to stay in her assigned role. She shocked Europe not by any scandalous act, but by rising above scandal entirely. She shocked Europe by being wiser than her rivals, stronger than her enemies, and more capable than those who tried to destroy her. She shocked Europe by proving that greatness has no gender. And that is the real story behind the horse scandal. Not a tale of disgrace, but a testament to a woman who changed the course of history. Thanks for watching. If you found this story interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more hidden histories. See you next time.